My name is Clara West. I'm 33 years old, and about 3 years ago I lived through one of the strangest and most terrifying experiences of my life. At that time, I was trying to cope with the end of my engagement, something that broke me from the inside. Lucas, my ex, broke everything off abruptly, 2 months before our wedding. He asked me to meet at a cafe near my office and said, looking at the floor the whole time, "I thought I could do it, Clara, but I'm just not ready for this. Forgive me." That was it. Later I discovered through a mutual friend that he was having an affair with a coworker from his gym. The betrayal left me hollow. I stopped eating properly, I couldn't sleep, and I began using work as anesthesia. I'm an architect, and at that time I was already known for being the last to leave the office. My best friend Renata gave me an ultimatum. One day she showed up at my apartment with a serious look, unplugged my laptop and said, "Enough. You're going to destroy yourself. You need to disappear for a while, from everything." Her proposal was simple but spot on. A solo retreat in the middle of nature, to disconnect from everything. Cell phone, social media, people. Renata is passionate about hiking and convinced me to do a 5-day trek through the Twain National Forest in Missouri. She herself helped me plan everything, from the route to the gear, and insisted I bring a satellite phone to check in with her from time to time. Even though I was scared, something inside me said this was necessary. It wasn't just about nature. It was about silence, isolation, relearning to exist without carrying pain as baggage. I needed to leave the world for a while, and that place, so far from everything, seemed the only path. The first day was magical. There's no other word for it. The crisp October air, the red and gold leaves carpeting the trails, the smell of damp wood. I set up camp near a postcard-perfect creek. I made a dehydrated pasta meal that surprisingly hit the spot after the long day, sat by the fire, and stared up at the stars. I hadn't seen a sky like that since I was a child. For the first time in months, my shoulders relaxed. I felt like maybe I was finally beginning to climb out of the depths. But that peace didn't last long. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up with my heart pounding. Something had stirred me. It was a sound, I think. I lay still, listening. The forest was utterly silent, and that was what scared me most. No crickets, no owls, not even the creek's water, just silence. And then it began. A whistle, thin, continuous, and very soft, as if someone were far away, but at the same time close enough for me to hear clearly. It wasn't wind or an animal. It was a melody, and it didn't seem random. It seemed intentional. I tried to rationalize. Maybe another camper. But I knew nobody would be there. That section of trail was known for being isolated, and I had chosen it precisely for that reason. The whistle stopped suddenly. In its place came murmurs, voices, low, hard to understand, but with the rhythm of a human conversation. I was shaking. I grabbed my flashlight and called out, "Is someone there?" Immediately the voices vanished. Sweat ran down my face despite the cold night air. Slowly, I unzipped my tent. The clearing was deserted, lit only by moonlight. My fire had burned down to embers. I called out again. Total silence. A gust of wind stirred dry leaves swirling around me. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The next morning the world felt different. A thick fog blanketed everything as if the forest wanted to hide something. I broke camp early, trying to persuade myself that the previous night had been the result of exhaustion and pent-up tension. I headed toward 11 Point River as planned. The trail was harder than I expected, full of uphill stretches, branches crossing the path, trees so dense they barely let any light through. Around noon, I stopped, at an improvised overlook to eat something and calm down. That's when I saw it, through the trees far below, a pale shape moving among the trunks. I tried to focus, but it vanished quickly, and for the first time I felt the forest wasn't just a forest. It was alive, and watching me. I kept walking, but the feeling of being followed never left me. Every time a dry branch snapped, I turned around. Every shadow that shifted sent my heart racing. It was in that tension that I got lost. The trail seemed to change location. The markers, once easy to spot, were obscured by moss or simply gone. My GPS, reliable until then, started to fail. Its screen flickered, my position danced around. That's when I spotted a cabin among the trees. It was old, with gray wooden walls that almost blended into the undergrowth. It wasn't marked on any map I had. Nevertheless, I walked toward it, praying someone inside could help. But the closer I got, the stronger the urge not to enter. There were no signs of life. No car, no smoke from a chimney. Only a rocking chair on the porch, moving by itself, slowly, as if someone had just stood up from it. I called out a few times. No answer. Still, I climbed the 2 creaking steps onto the veranda. The chair stopped rocking the moment my foot touched the wooden floor. It was as if the very house sensed my presence. The door was ajar. I pushed it slowly. The smell was horrible. Mold, wet earth, and something sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit. The house looked frozen in time, coated in dust, except for one detail. Small footprints leading from the door to a table at the far end, and back again. Barefoot child's footprints. Against all my instincts, I approached the table. On it lay items that made no sense together. An antique mirror face down, a rag doll with button eyes and a patchwork dress made of real scraps. A glass jar filled with what I thought were marbles, but were actually glass eyes of various colors. In the midst of it all lay a leather notebook, open to pages of cramped, frantic handwriting. The text mixed English with French and another language I couldn't identify. One phrase appeared repeatedly. Elle attend dans les bois, elle a toujours faim. My French is rusty, but I understood enough. She waits in the woods. She is always hungry. That's when I heard a noise outside, a dry snap like a breaking branch. I ran to the door expecting to see someone, but the porch was empty. Only the rocking chair, rocking again. But this time, fast, as if someone were really there. A chill ran through me. When I turned to flee, I heard a clear, girlish giggle coming from inside the cabin. I ran, without looking back, straight into the woods. When I finally stopped to catch my breath and looked back, the cabin was gone. Where the building had stood, there was only dense forest, with no trace that anything had ever been there. That giggle still echoed in my mind when I heard the whistle again, the same one from the previous night, but now coming from deeper in the woods, off the trail. This time I recognized the melody. It was that old children's circle game song, Tiranda, Tirandinha, whistled slowly and ominously. My GPS showed I was miles from where I thought I was, at a spot not even on my paper map. I tried calling on the satellite phone, but all I got was static, garbled voices. I called out over and over. Hello? Is anyone there? Can you hear me? Nothing. The battery, which had been full that morning, now showed 14%. I sat in a random clearing and began to pitch my tent, trembling. As I fitted the poles together, I noticed symbols carved into the bark of the surrounding trees. Some simple stick figures with long arms and distorted heads, others made of spirals and surrounding lines. All were fresh, the exposed wood still pale. This wasn't old. It had been made recently. I was about to flee when I heard another branch snap behind me. I spun around, holding a tent pole like an improvised spear, and there she was, a very small old woman, perhaps no taller than 1.5 meters, wrinkled like crumpled paper, wearing a dark dress, a stained apron, and mud-caked boots. But her eyes were worst, very pale blue, almost white, yet shimmering in a way that rooted me to the spot. "You're lost," she said matter-of-factly. Her voice was firm, surprisingly young for such an old body. I could only nod. She looked around as if she saw something I could not. This forest confuses people's heads, and when you come full of pain, it calls to you. I asked, trembling, if she lived there. She only replied, "Longer than the tracks have been, and they keep shifting." When I asked her name, she paused, then said, "Call me Mrs. Selma." When I gave her my name, she looked at me oddly, as though recognizing something. Clara West. I understand. That terrified me. How did she know my last name? She said she could get me out, but I must not look back no matter what I heard. And when you leave, never return. I obeyed. She led me along paths I never could have found alone until she left me on a dirt road where, miraculously, my GPS began working again. I walked for hours until I got signal and called for help. I never spoke to Mrs. Selma again. I never found that cabin. To this day, occasionally when I'm alone and it's too quiet, I swear I hear that whistle once more. Story 2. My name is Derek Monroe. I'm 41. I work as an RV mechanic, and I live in Joplin, Missouri. This happened last September on a Weekend when I decided to do something I almost never do. Take some time for myself. I've been servicing RVs for nearly 20 years, traveling half the state delivering vehicles, doing tune-ups, rescuing stranded folks in the middle of nowhere. But that weekend, I just wanted to be another camper. I took my own RV, a 2008 Winnebago View, filled it up, checked everything over, and drove solo to Mark Twain National Forest. My plan was to camp 3 days, read some old books collecting dust, and forget the workshop's hustle. I arrived at an area called Pine Hollow, relatively isolated but still reachable by dirt road. It was off-season and barely used, with only 3 or 4 RV spots. When I got there, I was alone. The weather was mild, the sky clear, and the forest glowing golden as only September can make it. The place felt perfect. Silence, just weak enough cell service to not bother me, and the steady crackle of wind-bent twigs. I parked facing a shallow creek, cooked my dinner, leisurely, cracked open a beer, and fell asleep early to the sound of crickets and a lone frog croaking near the water. That first night I slept like a rock. I woke only to sunlight streaming through the RV skylight. I made coffee, hiked a short trail nearby, and spent the morning in a camping chair enjoying the breeze. In the afternoon, I noticed something had changed. I couldn't explain what, but the wind felt different, colder, as if the forest had held its breath for too long, and the crickets, loud all afternoon, had gone silent. I didn't think much of it, maybe normal. After dinner, I sat outside wearing my cap flashlight, reading a Stephen King short story. Full dark, only my flashlight and the blue LED of the RV's solar panel glowing. Then I heard it, a metallic scraping sound, faint but constant, like someone dragging a blade along the bumper of my RV. I stood up slowly, switched off the flashlight, and waited. It continued, scraping in short bursts, like someone testing blades on a surface. My heart pounded as I edged toward the RV side with my light. When I got close, the sound stopped. I shone the light around. Nobody. Absolutely nothing. But the bumper was scratched, and it hadn't been that way in the morning. I went back inside, trying to keep calm. I locked the doors and closed every window, even knowing it wouldn't stop a determined intruder. The night remained eerily silent. No crickets, no frogs, no wind, just a silence that weighed on the ears, like thicky air. I lay there with my phone flashlight on, staring at the ceiling. Each creak of the RV made my heart leap. It felt like something was circling outside, but always just out of sight. I refused to go check again. Around 3 a.m. I heard what sounded like footsteps around the trailer. Light, deliberate, almost childlike, as if someone were walking barefoot on damp earth, circling the RV slowly. I grabbed a screwdriver and peered through the side window crack. Nothing. But when I tried to go back to bed, the solar panel LED blinked. Once, twice, 3 times, then went out for good. That never happened before, and I'd installed it myself. It confirmed my fear. Something, or someone, was tampering with the system. I waited for dawn without sleeping. As soon as the sun peeked through the trees, I went outside to inspect. The scratches on the bumper were deeper, and now there were footprints in the wet ground. Small but human. The ground was moist, the imprint clear. Bizarrely, they circled the trailer but had no beginning or end, starting from nowhere and ending nowhere. On the RV's left side, I saw words scratched into the metal with something sharp. Not just you. That did me in. I'm not someone who scares easily. I've seen it all on the roads. But this was different. I needed out. I didn't finish my coffee or check my rig. I just started the engine and drove off. I spent almost an hour on dirt before reaching pavement, but the feeling of being followed stayed with me. I stopped. At a gas station in Birch Tree, the attendant pointed at the bumper scars and said, "Forest got you, huh? Pine Hollow?" I nodded. He just said, "You're not the first to come back like that." But nobody stays there long. That night I slept at home but dreamt of footsteps outside the RV, the bumper being clawed, and someone peeking through the skylight. For weeks I avoided anything camping related. I couldn't focus on work in the shop, and I still haven't returned to that forest. I saved a photo of the footprints and the scratched bumper on my phone, not to prove anything, but to remind myself it really happened. If you've read this far and are thinking of camping alone with a trailer in Mark Twain, especially Pine Hollow, think twice. Some places don't want us there. Some places wait. And when you're vulnerable, they come. I don't know what it was, but I know it found me. And somehow it still knows where I am. Story 3. My name is Amber Reynolds. I'm 36. I teach English at a high school in Jefferson City, and to this day I can't spend a night alone without keeping all the lights on. It started in the fall of 2022 when I decided to take a trailer trip to relieve stress after a tumultuous semester. My husband and I had just separated and I desperately needed time alone. I borrowed my brother's 2014 Forest River RV, filled it up, tossed in some books and comfy clothes, and set off. I'd always heard Mark Twain National Forest was great for peaceful camping, so that's where I headed, planning to stay 2 days in the middle of nowhere. I chose a spot called Willow Bend, far off the beaten path, reachable only by a narrow gravel road for those truly seeking isolation. When I arrived, there was one other trailer across the clearing, but nobody around. Perfect. I parked on flat ground with a view down a natural tree tunnel. The place was beautiful, almost magical, and the silence felt like an embrace. I spent the afternoon reading and cooking a simple dinner. When night fell, I listened to the forest through the open skylight of the RV. Exactly what I needed. I woke in the middle of the night feeling the trailer shift, as if someone outside had nudged it. I opened my eyes and froze, listening intently. No sound at all. No crickets, no wind, not even creaking branches. It was as if the forest held its breath. My first impulse was to peer through the side window. Nothing but darkness between the trees. When I checked the door handle, it felt damp, like someone had touched it with wet hands. I brushed it off as morning dew, but something was off with the lights. The RV's exterior motion sensor lights flickered on and off by themselves, first on the left side, then the right. Once, twice, 3 times, as if something or someone circled the trailer. I stayed still for 15 minutes watching the blinking lights until they finally stopped. When I dared to crack the window, I saw footprints in the dewy grass, barefoot impressions, too small to be adult. The next morning I awoke to strong sunlight but felt unrested. I went outside. The footprints were still there, clear in the pressed grass. I followed the trail. It circled the RV, then led off opposite the road I'd come from. The other trailer was gone. No tire tracks, no trash, nothing. As if it had never existed. That unsettled me. I tried telling myself someone left early. Still, I decided to stay another day. I'd driven too far to let fear win. I spent the morning trying to relax, but my senses were on, high alert. Every noise or shadow spiked my heartbeat. In the afternoon, I saw something that stole my breath. Seated in my camping chair, looking down the tree tunnel, was a figure, slim, motionless, wearing a dirty white dress. I stared so long I lost track of time, then blinked, and it was gone. Just empty woods. That night I triple-locked the RV door and even used a steering wheel lock on the door handle. But around 2 a.m. I woke to rhythmic tapping on the metal siding, first on one side, then behind, then on the door. Always 3 taps with precise pauses. The taps weren't attempts to break in. They seemed to be reminders that something was there. I grabbed my phone, but the camera wouldn't pick up outside sound. When I finally mustered courage to look through the hatch, I saw a child, or something resembling a child. She stood about 4 meters away, wearing a white nightgown, hair plastered against her face. Most disturbing was that she faced away from me, motionless, yet I felt she knew I was watching her. I froze. After what felt like hours, she simply vanished. No running, no walking away. She evaporated into thin air. I packed in 20 minutes and left before dawn. I drove 5 hours until I found an open gas station, only stopping when the sun was high. I told my brother, who asked, "You were in Willow Bend? That area's been closed since summer." When I asked why, he said the Forest Service had reports of strange sounds, apparitions, even missing persons. Nothing. Confirmed, of course, but the rangers avoided the area. Back home that night, I kept the bedroom light on. Since then, I've never slept in complete darkness. Almost 2 years have passed, but sometimes I get motion alerts on my security cameras at night. In some murky frames, I see a small figure standing, watching my house. I don't know if it's my imagination or... Story 4. My name is Caleb Turner. I'm 29. I'm a nature photographer living in Springfield, Missouri. This happened this summer. Before last, when I went on a solo expedition to capture nighttime forest shots. I was building a new portfolio of campsite under the stars photos, planning to use my converted Sprinter trailer as base. I'm experienced in backcountry travel, so I picked a little explored stretch of Mark Twain National Forest near Miller's Ridge. The dirt road was rough, but the view promised to be stunning. No light pollution in an open field surrounded by towering trees. I arrived late afternoon and parked near a circle of stones marking an old fire pit. The place felt forgotten. I grabbed a snack, checked my gear, and prepared for night. The sky was crystal clear. Stars appeared even before sunset faded. Around 9 p.m. I set up my tripod a few meters from the trailer for long exposures. I felt peaceful. The forest's only sounds were owls and crickets. I took dozens of shots of an impossibly starry sky. Around midnight I sensed something odd. The temperature plummeted, though it was summer, and a thick mist rolled across my field. It came from nowhere. I hesitated but kept shooting. New conditions can yield great photos. Then I heard it. A whisper from the tree line where the fog was densest, calling my name. Caleb. I froze. No one else knew I was there. I told myself it was echo or wind, packed up hurriedly, and went back to the trailer. I locked up and sat in the driver's seat, eyes on the rearview mirror. The fog thickened, swirling around the trailer as if waiting. Periodically I heard light steps outside, always soft, childlike, circling. Each time they stopped exactly behind the door. Part of me wanted to scream, but another part knew better than to open. All night it went on. Whenever the mist waned, the steps returned, along with whispers calling my name. Sometimes at the kitchen window, sometimes at the back. Once, a sound that froze me. 3 taps on the roof, followed by an elongated whisper. Caleb. I tried recording on my phone, but all I got was static. I wondered if I was losing my mind or if the forest truly wanted to call me out. By 4 a.m., I heard something different. A whistled nursery rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. But slow, discordant, as though someone struggled to whistle properly. When I peeked out the rear window, I saw a thin, stooped figure there, so still it looked part of the landscape. Then my interior light flickered, something that's never happened, and the figure took 2 steps forward. I closed the curtain in panic. At dawn, the mist vanished as if it had never been. The field was dry, sky bright. I cautiously stepped out. Everything seemed normal. But where I'd mounted my tripod, I found handprints in the soil. Not footprints, but hand imprints as if someone crawled there. Around them, the grass was flattened in concentric circles, as if something had lingered. Pinned by a stone was a page torn from my notebook, with a crude drawing of my trailer surrounded by eyes. I drove away in shock, abandoning my chute. On the drive back, my radio kept flipping stations even when off, only static and distant whispers. Once I escaped the forest's influence, everything abruptly returned to normal. Music, GPS, cell signal, as if I'd left another world. I returned with friends a month later, but the field had changed. Denser, damper. The circle, prints, and drawing were gone. One friend, unaware of the story, said, "This place smells like abandoned church." He felt watched constantly, though he saw nothing. Since then, I've had recurring sleep paralysis, always dreaming of the trailer, fog, and something whistling outside. Logic can't explain what I saw and felt. Now, if someone asks if I recommend camping alone at Miller's Ridge, I say only if you're certain you'll return alone. Story 5. My name is Janelle Brooks. I'm 47. I've been a nurse for over 2 decades, and I live in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. My story happened 3 summers ago on what was meant to be my horror-free break. After nearly 2 years on the hospital front lines, endless shifts, stress, losses galore, my body and mind begged for rest. My children insisted I do something just for me, so I decided to spend a weekend alone in my refurbished Airstream trailer. I'd always wanted to camp solo and thought Clearwater Hollow in Mark Twain National Forest would be ideal, reported to be remote yet safe. I arrived Friday afternoon under a clear sky and humid July heat. The meadow among tall pines and a small lake was gorgeous. I parked beneath a huge tree, hooked up solar panels, and got settled. I made a light dinner, poured white wine, played soft music on a portable speaker, and sat barefoot on the grass at the trailer's entrance. I felt alive again in a way I hadn't for years. Silence, fresh forest air, orange-pink sky. It was almost unreal. That first night was quiet despite the heat. I slept with the window cracked and the fan on. I woke once around 3 a.m. to a dry snap, thinking a branch fell. I only got concerned when I noticed no other sound, not insects, frogs, or owls. It was like the forest held its breath. I looked out the window, saw nothing, and tried to sleep, blaming my mind for racing with stress. The next evening, everything changed. I was washing dinner dishes when I heard a female voice outside, soft, almost sung, speaking an old tune. I looked out. Nothing. I turned off all interior lights and watched through a gap in the blinds. Then I saw it, a white-gowned silhouette, thin and slowly drifting around the clearing. No light source, no sound of footsteps, just sliding among the trees, always just out of moonlight. I grabbed my phone to record, but the image blurred, and when I focused, the figure was gone. The atmosphere shifted. I could feel the air thicken. I secured windows and locked the door, then sat in the kitchen area in silence. Then the voice returned, closer, repeating an unintelligible phrase that sounded like French, a warped lullaby on old vinyl. It circled the trailer. No footprints. Left. The dread I felt was as physical as emotional. My limbs tingled and I struggled to breathe. I stayed up until dawn, clutching a kitchen knife, hoping it could protect me. At first light, I stepped out. No tracks, no sign of entry, but on the trailer's side, someone had drawn in mud. A broken heart with a cross through it, and an eye in the left half. It wasn't child's play. It was symbolic. I packed in 20 minutes and left. On the drive home, my radio only received static until it suddenly tuned itself to an oldies station playing Hush Little Baby, the same lullaby I'd heard. I nearly pulled over. I went straight to my eldest daughter's in Cape Girardeau and stayed 3 days before returning home alone. When I told her, she chalked it up to stress. But I know what I saw and heard was real, and not part of me. It was out there. 2 weeks later, I washed the trailer and noticed the mud drawing had faded. But as I wiped it, my hand tingled just like that night. I stopped immediately and sold the trailer the next month at a steep discount. I've never camped again, even with friends. Every time I see a forest road, my stomach knots. It's as if something there still waits. I don't know who or what that presence was. Could have been a woman. Could have been something else. But it carried a strange mixture of sorrow and rage, like living pain seeking company. And it found an echo in me. Perhaps that's why it followed me. And maybe it still does. Now, when I'm alone at night and the wind howls, I sometimes hear that whisper again, calling my name. Story 6. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 38. I'm an interstate truck driver. And this happened about 4 years ago when I decided to spend a 2-week break traveling with my son Lucas, then 9. The idea was simple. Father and son exploring trails, fishing, telling ghost stories by the fire. I just refurbished my small fifth-wheel trailer and wanted to take it somewhere special, off my usual commercial routes. I chose Dry Creek in Ice, Mark Twain National Forest on a fellow driver's recommendation, secluded, peaceful, with a shallow fishing stream. It seemed perfect. We arrived Tuesday afternoon after nearly an hour on dirt road. The setting was beautiful, towering trees and the constant murmur of water over stones. We parked by the creek, set up our awning, camping chairs and lanterns. I grilled burgers. We caught small fish, then ended the day sharing jokes under the stars. Lucas was thrilled. I was too. It had been ages since we'd had such time together. At 10 p.m. we retreated to the trailer, exhausted and happy. I woke at midnight to muffled laughter, not Lucas's, but multiple childlike voices giggling softly, as if hidden. I rose cautiously and looked out a side window. Nothing. The laughter dialed down and drifted toward the creek. I grabbed a flashlight and slippers, stepped outside and called, "Is someone there?" Silence, like the sound was cut off. Back inside, I double-checked locks and lay awake listening to silence, heart pounding. Then I heard crying. Lucas's crying. He sat in bed, blanket up to his nose, eyes wide. "Dad, there's a boy looking in the window," he whispered. I flipped all the lights on and searched inside and out. Nothing, no footprints, no trace. But my son's fear felt real. He never lied when scared. Next morning, Lucas barely left the trailer. He said the boy at the window had dark hair and very pale skin, his face smeared with mud like he'd emerged from a hole. I tried to reassure him it was a nightmare, but I felt unsettled too. Outside, I found strange marks, parallel gouges in the soil, like something dragged across. Under Lucas's window, someone had placed 2 stones stacked with a small human tooth on top. I hid it from Lucas, tossed the stones in the creek, and willed myself that it was a sick prank. We spent the day fishing, trying to keep occupied. Lucas seemed calmer but asked to leave next day. I agreed. That night, I prepped for departure and left the engine running. Before dawn, I heard 3 taps on the trailer's rear. I checked my security camera snapshot, just swirling mist. At 4 a.m., Lucas screamed. I ran to him. He was shaking. He said a hoarse, slow whisper of his name came from outside, and he'd seen 3 children, muddy and hand in hand, standing by the creek. They called me, he said. That was enough. I started the trailer and left without coffee, not stopping until we were back on paved highway, sunlight bright. Lucas rode mostly, asleep, but peaceful, as if leaving lifted something heavy from him. Later, I showed the camera video to a friend who edits footage. He enhanced contrast and caught something. For 2 seconds during the bangs, a tiny silhouette darts past in the background. Too small, too quick, with strangely long arms. We never spoke of it again. I deleted the file. Since then, I avoid camping where there are no neighbors. Lucas won't even sleep near a window. He still remembers that weekend, and sometimes asks if, the Creek children know where we live. I don't know. But whenever I pass by Dry Creek on my routes, I detour. That area has an odd smell, a heaviness in the air, like something never left, waiting for the next family foolish enough to think getting away from it all is a good idea. I don't know what lives in that forest, but I can promise you, you're never truly alone, and they don't want you there.